It's the Off Grid Prep Family Podcast.
Hey everybody, on today's episode of the OffGridPrepFamily, we're talking about family considerations for prepping and off-grid living. Plan as you may, it's a lot harder to live off-grid than just pitching a tent and living off hot dogs and granola until your house is built. In this episode, we'll talk about family considerations when you're going off-grid or when you're prepping.
Now, when you're living off the grid, you have to take into consideration doing laundry without a washing machine, getting water without a tap, eating healthy without packaged meals, disposing of black waste safely,
Yes.
and a lot more.
And once you realize how much there is to think about, it could be scary, but with the right knowledge, it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
If you're moving to your off-grid property, whether you're in the prairies or the jungle, you have to put your highest 3 priorities in order.
Yep.
Shelter, water, food.
Yep.
We're going to go into more depth about that. But for now, why don't you tell me about when we arrived at our property, sight unseen, in an RV with no tools and very rusty skills.
Yeah, I was rusty.
We've been living the easy life on the West Coast, and living off-grid on the West Coast is very different than living off-grid in the forest.
Easy. It was a different kind of hard, and really a worse kind of hard.
That's true.
Worrying about that $4,000 a month rent bill.
Yeah.
That was a big
if you're
problem.
going to pay mortgage and rent and utilities and taxes, and it's easier to live somewhere cheaper and just worry about.
Yeah. At least it lets us it gives us space to think about things. So yeah, when we first got our property, we were getting we got water at the grocery store. Like drinking water. We didn't have our Berkey set up yet. Well, we didn't have any water except pond water.
We had a Berkey, but we had nothing to put in.
We had no water, and the creek water was really skeezy.
We were going to wreck our Berkey pretty quick, putting that creek water in there because we've got a lot of fertilizer.
We tried it. Yeah, the algae. So our first thing, obviously, was shelter.
Yeah.
And so
we had the RV.
But it was
for a big family,
really hot.
It was pretty tight. It was pretty hot. We had these little disco bunk beds that every morning we would take down, and I broke my finger one day taking them down. They're so brutal.
They were really heavy.
Who designed those things?
I think it's one of those old designs. Yeah. What was I going to say?
So arriving, we came with basically no tools because you'd kind of had a cushy job for a while.
I did, yeah.
And we were moving across the country and every pound counts.
It did, yeah.
So we had a Sawzall and a drill and some very basic things.
Yeah.
And everything we owned was crammed into this RV that we also had to fit 5 children in at the time, I guess it was.
At the time it was 5.
Yeah. And so we arrived, we kind of could figure out where our driveway was supposed to be, but it was so overgrown you had to cut down trees.
Yeah.
And it took us 3 days, I think, to get up the driveway. Because there was actual trees growing in the driveway.
No, it took us 3 days just to get off the road, into the bush.
Into the bush
and another week to get up there. So
first, I have to cut you off to talk about Thrive Life freeze-dried food. We use Thrive Life for everything long-term food storage and for our quick meals and snacks when we're kind of running behind in life. If you use the referral code on our Friends and Affiliates page, you get a 15% discount on your first order if you visit offgridprepfamily.com/friends.
Nice.
Pretty yummy.
Yeah,
okay.
Good stuff.
So, anyways.
So once we got our shelter down, that was the basic shelter, and it was not going to last long.
No, you have to think about size, especially if it's not just the 2 of you and there's kids.
Even with people. 2 children, and it didn't have proper facilities. I cracked the black water tank coming up, and even if I was going to use the black water tank and not a proper septic system, I'm just going to have to empty it. So this is a disgusting, unhealthy job.
Week gross.
So we were lucky we had a little cabin that was on the property.
If you can find land that has a ramshackle
Any structure.
something.
This was totally ramshackle. It didn't have proper walls. It was an A-frame, but
it was listed as a tear-down shed
and
somehow.
It pretty much was, but
Yeah.
it was new enough. The materials, like the roof, was only 10 or 12 years old. So that was a real plus, and it had a roof. It was basically a tent
Yeah.
of a structure. And so we...
I would definitely also, if you have land that's cheap that you've bought and you don't have a structure, get some wall tents. We've lived in wall tents before. They're awesome.
They are awesome. The only problem with the wall tent for us was, so the first night that we spent in, or maybe it was the second night, we just took our mattresses. All we did was clean the structure. It was full of a bunch of old clothes.
Raccoon poop.
There wasn't a lot of poop. Maybe some
Shotgun
mouse
shells.
turds. Yeah, there was shotgun shells.
A
That
lot
was
of
super
shotgun
weird.
shells, which is odd for Canada.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's not really any hunting where we are, so that was a weird thing.
There's no large animals on our island, so what are you shooting?
So, yeah, and so we decided this thing was, the floor was like the ocean waves, because they just put it on random cinder block piers. Like, it didn't have any kind of proper foundation. They used 2x6s like as the floor joists, and they just didn't know how to put the thing on any kind of a proper footing.
So it was just like wavy.
It was wavy, like you'd roll into each other.
I walked up here with the kids, with the baby and the baby carrier, ducking under fallen trees and going around, like literally huge maple trees that were like in the middle of the driveway. And we stumbled on this cabin, and this whole thing was my idea. It was kind of my money. I'd bought this land sight unseen, made you move across the country, and I thought, he's going to be so mad. Because the floor was like an ocean.
It was bad.
It was bad.
But we fixed it.
We moved in. A whole lot.
No, the first stage, this is getting into the, still talking about primary shelter. The first thing we did, because it was getting so hot in the trailer at night, it was coming into July, I guess. And the first thing we did was clean it out, sweep it out. I think I had a shop vac. No. Anyway, we cleaned it out. We threw everything off the back deck, and then we went and got a patio door from the hardware.
Because it didn't have a...
It didn't have a wall. It just had plywood sheets all nailed together with old antique windows. I'm surprised they didn't blow out now.
That's impressive, really.
So we got it livable with a patio door and a door and some studs, and we moved in. I use the term loosely. We took our mattresses and air mattresses. We just laid them out on the floor for us and the kids.
Those little self-inflating mattresses are so great.
They're great. We had those for years, actually. The kids only recently got real mattresses just when we built this new wing. Yeah. It was like a little treat. And that was our primary residence. And eventually we renovated it, and we put it on a proper foundation. We put a kitchen in it, a full kitchen, sink, everything. I put in a gray water tank, and then as we've said before, we use the shavings and bucket method.
That's what we did.
And that's what we did for almost 2 years.
Now we're putting in real septic. One day you'll be able to get it on Airbnb if one of our kids doesn't move into it.
Yeah, it's a great little structure now.
But if you don't buy a property with some kind of structure, I would, even if you have an RV,
it doesn't last long.
Some kind of something, like a little Amish shed, a cabin. I would kind of warn you against log cabins. Number one, for insulation. But number two, the amount of trees you have to harvest to build a cabin.
Yeah, and the type of trees. You better have a lodgepole pine forest.
Some really good trees.
Cedars, maybe.
You'd probably make more money selling those trees and building a proper house.
Yeah, and the R value, the insulation is just...
You can visit a site, it's called TrueLog, and they can help you calculate how many logs you need to build the size of cabin that you want. For example, if you want to build a 20 by 24 cabin, you need 44 10-inch logs just for the walls.
Wow.
That's a lot of trees, right?
Wow.
You could do straw
bale. How big of a cabin was that?
20 by 24.
20 by 24.
It's pretty tiny.
And with
44 trees.
And how many trees did the first wing take? Because I built that with post and beam out of our trees.
I thought it was 22, but it included the roof, and this doesn't include the roof.
Oh, so yeah, so we to build a 13 or 1400 square foot straw bale structure with post and beam rafters and posts.
It was 22 trees.
It was 22 trees that I milled up.
All that big.
They were 12 inch at the base, 14 inch at the base.
Yeah, and then some straw bales from the neighbor.
Yeah.
If you don't live somewhere where they grow wheat or something, then,
Yeah, I think ours was oat straw.
You gotta adapt to your area, right?
Yeah.
You can do straw bale, cob, or earth ship, and we have those coming up. If you want to listen to episode 15 for more about building your own home, we also have in-depth episodes about alternative building methods coming up in season 2, but those things take longer.
Yeah.
It's not going to be quick and easy, and you probably won't have it done by the winter. I would recommend getting something up, even if it's just like one of those metal shops, just so you have room, especially if you have kids, and that will allow you to build your dream house slow and steady and without debt.
Yes, slow and steady is best.
Yeah,
absolutely, and without debt.
If you own the land under you and the roof above you, no one can touch you.
We still haven't finished the drywall on our ceilings.
It's fine.
It's totally fine. I'd like it to look pretty. It adds no...
One of these days we'll have trim. One of these days it'll be great. And we've built off-grid houses before, and I know that enough to know that when you finally get it done, it doesn't really make all that much of a difference to your daily life anyways.
No.
Size can be a factor if you have a family. We just have a boys' bedroom, a girls' bedroom, and a master bedroom. And that's really nice, especially if you have teenagers. Yeah, they're large rooms. Sharing rooms. Yeah, the kids' rooms are bigger than ours. Yeah. But the girls and boys share.
Our oldest is...
17.
He's 17 and a half now.
Yeah.
And he wants to get out. He's not totally uncomfortable. He's got a little desk in his bed, and his bed's elevated, and he's got his own side of the room. But we can tell that he's ready for more, so we are planning to maybe put him into the cottage or put a second story on our planned garage. We're not sure yet, but those are definitely considerations.
I would say, just to wrap up the topic of shelter, try not to do temporary structures if you can avoid it.
Yeah.
If you need to get something up quick, make it something that you can use as your garage or your shop or rent out later for some income.
Yeah.
We're really not fans of throwing any effort or money into things that are temporary, because that's a really easy pit to fall into, especially with homesteading and off-grid living.
And if you don't build it well, like the cottage that we worked on, I put a really great foundation under it. It's on concrete pads with posts and treated posts and laminated beams, and it'll be that way for decades. You know, like it's a great structure now, and we can use it for anything.
Yeah.
So when you're building a structure, do your best to do it proper. Like, don't build a tinny little shed, because it's going to be a problem later.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about laundry.
Yeah.
Because you're the laundry man.
I am the laundry man.
The men in the house do our laundry. Yeah. I don't know how I pulled that off.
We can't cook. No, we don't. We just don't. I mean, I can cook, but
the men in our house handle all the laundry.
We do. Yeah.
Okay, laundry. Short term, you can wash your hand wash your clothes in a bucket with soapy water, or you can take them to the laundromat. It is expensive, and hand washing clothes just doesn't get them as clean.
No.
And if you're going to use a washboard, that does get men's white socks very clean, but I personally would not want to do that for a long time.
You spend half your day doing it.
We've used a lot of the little gizmos, the plunger and a bucket. We've done the Travels with Charlie, Search of America, put it in the back of your truck. None of it's as good as a washing machine, especially a front load, because it hardly takes any water.
Yeah, we've had a front load washer that we bought used when we first moved here. I've replaced a few parts on it, the main control board, but it's, I don't know, 10, 12 years old. I don't even know how old it is, and we still have the same one.
Yeah.
We've thought about getting a new one, but that's one of those things where just a standard front load washing machine is the absolute, miles away, the best choice.
Yeah. As far as electric dryers, you can run one off-grid if you just want to I guess do it when the sun is shining and you're charged.
Yeah, we have before.
We've done that before. Or if you really just like your fluffy white towels, just run your generator for that 45 minutes and get your fluffy white towels. But
that's a convenience thing.
I would, sort of a princessy thing. I could see it.
Oh, totally. I could go for some fluffy towels.
But I would totally recommend, at least at first, just get a really good quality clothesline with a few lines run on it, so you don't have to take off the wet stuff to hang, whatever.
Yeah.
And really good quality clothespins. Try to practice this before you move off grid, because there's kind of an art to it, but eventually you figure out how to hang all your clothes so that they dry quickly.
I was going to say the art to it with our laundry, we still have an inside clothesline.
Yeah.
It's gaudy. I try and take it down when I'm not using it.
It rains a lot here.
It does. It rains every month.
We're on an island in the ocean. It rains constantly. And if it rains, we still need to wash diapers.
We do. We need to wash laundry every day.
People wearing clothes.
Yep. We lit a fire in the evening just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. It wasn't cold. It was just humid.
It was just really humid and rainy.
I call it the wood-fired clothes dryer.
Yeah.
It's not elegant, but it works.
Yep.
Okay, I've got a minute. Can you tell me about waste in 1 minute or less? Getting rid of waste.
No, I can't. I can tell you that we used to use the bucket. When we moved in here,
we put in septic.
The first phase, we couldn't afford real septic. Yeah. We had to fix that later.
Yeah.
So what we did is we buried a tote in the ground. We ran our black water pipe from our one and only toilet straight out to the tote, and then we put a couple of water. I don't know how to describe it. You put pipe. There's plans online on Instructables where they use rain barrels. We used a tote. It worked great for the first 2 years. Eventually, we put a real tank in, but for that $200 that I spent on material and we hand dug it in, I got us a real septic system that probably would have lasted for years.
Yeah, and like the bucket system is fine.
Yeah.
If it's only one or two of you, I could see that working long term.
Yeah, totally.
But I want to be able to live off grid in my 80s or 90s, and nobody wants to be an octogenarian.
That's our pursuit here, is
dumping
to be comfortable.
Buckets.
Yes. No.
So every single month I try and make life a little bit easier, a little less physically demanding, a little more automated and simple.
We got a pasta maker this week.
Yeah. I can roll out pasta, that's no problem, but this is easier, it's faster.
And waste is important.
It is.
Because then you don't have to think about it.
Yeah. I would definitely say try to figure out your waste systems, even your compost and your trash and recycling. Figure that out almost first, because people can really build up a lot of compost
and remember,
really quickly.
All of the things that are the way you're, quote, supposed to do it, these things have only been in play for the last generation or two tops.
Yeah.
We bought our kitchen cabinets. When we moved in, we bought them used from a gentleman who had bought a tiny little house in the next town. And he was describing, because I think we were working on our septic. I think we were still on a bucket then.
We had just got here.
So the topic came up, and he laughed, and he said, when I bought this house, I asked the guy about the septic system, and the guy said, I don't know, I think it's just a bucket out back, or a barrel out back.
Yeah.
And even 50, 60 years ago,
in town,
this was a
septic on a bucket.
This was a normal thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how often they had to muck the bucket out, but I guess
he got away with it, and I guess most of the older houses in that town were running into a 50-gallon barrel.
Septic fields, massive, hugely expensive septic fields these are brand new.
And you get kind of used to if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down.
Oh, yeah. But what we're getting at is the actual costs of the thing.
But just the amount of drinkable water that you're flushing every day, just don't
it's
flush
ridiculous.
it unless it needs to be flushed, and then your septic system can last that much longer.
It's so many layers to do things the conventional way of money that if you stick to conventional methods, you'll have a $500,000 mortgage in no time at all, and everything will just be a disaster.
Yeah. We have to break for our second sponsor today, which is, of course, EMP Shield. It protects any device that you plug into from an EMP, a CME, or a lightning strike. They have units for your car, your generator, and your whole home, And if you use code OGPF, you can get $50 off any unit.
I thought that seems kind of pie in the sky pretend,
Let's all hope
but they
works.
really seem to know what they're doing.
Yeah, and the military ordered a bunch of them. So
yeah,
we'll
so
go
they've
with
actually, we're going to run with that.
Okay, next we're going to talk about water. Eventually your aqua tabs and water filtration tablets are going to run out.
Yep.
And your best bet is probably a Berkey.
You have to get a Berkey.
You could also buy water bottles or like those big bottles.
We did that for the first year from the grocery store.
Pretty expensive long term.
It's very expensive.
You can blow out your filters, but eventually you're going to have to buy new filters.
Yep.
And then we're going to talk about food. For each person in your family, we're going to recommend at least 500 square feet of garden.
Mm-hmm.
This is if you're trying to just grow the majority of your own food.
Yeah.
We want to get at least 6 to 8 dwarf fruit trees because they produce more quickly.
Apples, cherries.
Yeah.
Yep.
12 berry bushes or vines like blackberries, raspberries, grapes.
We've had great success with vines here.
Yeah, Saskatoon berries, whatever grows well in your area.
Which we learned, our Saskatoons do not grow well here.
It's too hot here.
I almost think it's too humid.
Yeah, you got to use trial and error.
Yeah, where we
out.
got them from was a very dry climate.
Yeah.
Where we bought them from.
Per person, I'm going to say 4 asparagus crowns. And start with the crowns, not the seed, but also buy the seed.
Yep.
Plant the seed, buy your crowns, and then you have a huge bump in asparagus patch really quickly.
Asparagus was one of those things that you kind of demanded.
I insisted upon it.
And I'm so glad you did. We've been eating it all spring.
This been from May till July.
Third year,
This is our third year with the asparagus.
The second season was pretty good. Like the next...
The first season we got some. Second season was okay. This season, every single day, the kids are coming in with so much asparagus, handfuls and handfuls, that we're just all sick of it.
It often sits in that jar on the counter for 2 or 3 days.
And you can keep it in the jar on the counter, like a bunch of flowers.
Yeah, and it stays. It keeps growing.
Grows, which is kind of freaky.
It is very freaky. Great plant. 1
rhubarb plant per person. Yeah. And just divide them when they get big. And we want you to really focus on perennial vegetables like the Welsh bunching onions, asparagus, oregano, rhubarb, stuff that keeps coming back, stuff you don't have to think about year after year, and try to put your perennials all in one area so that you can kind of rotate the rest of your crops around them.
Also, you don't have to keep buying seed every year for those crops, which is very important.
Yeah, even the dill, it's not a perennial, but it reseeds.
It does.
So we have our dill beside our oregano because it just comes back. Honestly.
It's everywhere this year.
It comes back everywhere. It had a really good year last year.
Yeah.
The protein factor gets more efficient the larger the family you have.
That's true, actually. Yeah, because
the chickens for meat, the chickens for eggs.
Yeah.
Even keeping some larger animals like wiener pigs or a steer becomes way more efficient and more cost effective when you have more. Mm-hmm. With our family of 9, we need 20 hens to keep us in eggs reliably and for enough for us to keep for the winter when they're not laying as well.
Yep.
We need about 80 meat birds, just if you're looking for numbers. Mm-hmm. Whether, ducks, chickens, whatever. That's about perfect for us for a year.
For a year, yep.
And we take about 1 beef per year if it's a large one. If it's a kind of smaller beef, we need 1 beef for a year, and then we need a couple little top-ups that we get.
This is a whole cow you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. And then we kind of need one other protein source, whether it's like another half a cow or a whole pork or some lambs or just some cheap meat that you get on flash food and throw in your freezer.
Mm-hmm. Love flash food.
Yeah.
We just did flash food 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. We got a whole bunch of weird portion cheese, but like it must have been 15 pounds worth.
Some cool, fancy dry salami.
Fancy dry salami.
Oh, some weird little single-serve cheeses that were, really strong.
Kind of like Baby Bell.
It's that Anthony Bourdain cheese where he says if it doesn't smell a little offensive, he's not interested.
Yeah.
We get a lot of that on Flash Food.
A lot of weird stuff, clear out stuff.
If you want to try Flash Food and get $5 off, check out our friends and affiliates page. If you want to see what our planting plan looks like for our family, as far as the number of plants, the number of seeds, what it takes to not really have to use the grocery store a lot for produce, there is a copy of that on our Patreon login page. You can edit it, or you can just start from square one with what we have. Just as far as quantity, if both of our freezers are completely bursting by Thanksgiving, I know we're right about there.
Yeah, that we're still emptying the freezers out.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
we maybe went a little bit overboard, last year, but we're close.
Yeah.
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 Which is a good place to be
And-
when the economy is where it's at.
Our freezers, just to provide context or size, one of our freezers is quite easily the largest residential deep freeze I've ever encountered in my life. I didn't know they were this big.
You could fit a half dozen kids in there.
It is ridiculous.
They like to sit in
They demanded it. They wanted to crawl in, and because it has a light in it before we
It's
plugged it in.
fun.
It was hilarious. Anyway, our other freezer is a shamefully small apartment deep freeze.
Yeah, that's what we
That was
ran
all we
off our
could
tiniest
physically
system.
fit
Yeah.
in the cottage. And so between the two, I think we have 2 normal sized deep freezes.
Yeah.
So that's, if you're wondering how the size.
Quantity of food for a large family.
Yep.
You can edit that down as you see need.
Yeah.
So you have about 2.5 minutes to tell me whatever you want to tell me about setting up your off-grid property and prepping for a family.
Yeah, I really want to go into a little more detail about our first property, our cottage, because we did so many quick experiments there, like the hand well drilling.
Yeah.
The way we set it up was we couldn't fit water storage. So if you have a small structure and more than 2 people, you have to fit a fairly decent amount of water storage in the structure, and we couldn't fit anything in. So what
And you have to keep it from freezing if you
have to
live
keep it from
somewhere
freezing.
north.
So, kind of expanding on, first what we did is put the house on a proper foundation. And that involved strategically pouring concrete pads in 2 lines. So this is an A-frame. So we realized we needed to put 2 long beams under it from end to end, because the joists were going in the same line as the rafters. So you can picture looking at this triangle from one end and seeing a bunch of horizontal joists, so we know we needed 2 long beams at 1/3 points. And
Quarter points.
quarter points, you're right.
You gotta work on the
You're
quarter
the
points.
AT,
Yeah.
I'm just the engineer. Anyway,
You're just the,
I'm not a mechanical or
you're the-
structural engineer at all.
you're the grunt.
I'm the grunt. And so anyway, we put these pads in, we measured them out. It was really fairly easy to do. This thing was already a few feet in the air. It was, you know what, it was like a trailer on blocks. It was the exact same thing.
But it was so nerve-wracking.
Oh, it was so,
But
because these
I feel like
blocks
it was
were
sort
at
of
angles.
baptism by fire, as
Yeah.
far as like feeling like we knew what there was to know living off grid after doing it for so many years, and then coming into a completely new situation.
Totally new. We had never dealt with that kind of a situation where
I
we
would
needed to
never
put a
have
foundation
built
in
an
it.
A-frame, frankly.
No, they're horrible. They're awful.
It's all roof. It's all slopey walls.
It's
I don't
just
understand.
walls. You end up with all these little cavities
but
of
it's
wasted
really
space.
Cute.
Oh, it's
If there's
cute.
only
It's adorable.
like a single person or a couple.
You-
It's super cute.
You end up with a surprisingly small amount of walkable space.
Usable space.
It's awful.
If you've ever dodged around your spouse in an RV for a long amount of time,
Yeah.
an A-frame is just like that.
It's just like that. So we put this thing on a foundation, which, as I mentioned, was treated posts on concrete pads. And what we did is we lifted it up with 10-ton or 12-ton bottle jacks, little hand jacks from Princess Auto.
It was nerve-wracking.
They were $50, right? So I'm trying to describe how little money we spent. And
and
we
then
got this thing
put
on a
the water
foundation,
outside.
and we put the water outside, and we built a pal roof greenhouse around it.
On the south-facing side, which was awesome. And we got the best tomato crop we've probably ever had out of
It
that
was.
greenhouse.
Yep.
The gray water went into the greenhouse, and the fresh water was stored in the greenhouse,
Yep.
and it never froze.
Never froze. There was one month when I had to put a little Mr. Buddy propane heater in there.
Oh, right.
that
Those are
that
great.
second January,
Yeah.
I had to
Mr.
buy one of
Buddies.
those and run that little heater in
We'll
there.
put those on.
I
our
forgot
little
about the Mr.
store
Buddy.
because those
Great
are
little thing.
invaluable when you're getting set up.
Yeah, it's a ceramic-based heater, and it was fantastic. So that's what we did. We put
Yeah.
the water tanks outside, and we put it in we'll call it a quasi-heated greenhouse.
And it was great.
And it was great, and worked really well.
It was super cozy.
Yeah, and that was
once
our...
you have fresh water and your bucket toilet and where
Yeah.
to put the water, then you're good to go.
Then
you
you're
can
good.
do the fancy thing.
You're not good to go. You can move on to the next challenge. But
That's what off-grid's all about.
It
Moving
really
on
is.
to the next challenge.
Yeah,
It's sort of like prepping.
Our challenge this year is fitting into the budget, getting our pool filled.
Mm-hmm.
There's never quite enough rainwater. We've got about a 12,000 gallon in-ground pool, and I think there's about 4,000 gallons in it now just from rainwater. But we're starting to come into the hot months, and I don't think we're going to make it. So we got to consider spending a few $100s on a truck full of water.
Buying water hurts my soul almost as much as buying rocks.
Yeah.
You know how some people pay for rocks in their landscaping? That just,
But it's an absurdity of modern civilization. Like, for only $300, I pay this guy who's got a 100-gallon a minute well. Like, this is a water company.
Yes.
To drive the water. They're an hour and a half away. They're going to drive that water in this, I don't know, $250,000 rig and fill my pool.
You're right. It's too cheap, but it's still too
cheap.
expensive.
Exactly. And that's another thing we live on, is the things that we discover that are way cheaper than they should be.
Yeah.
You have to take advantage of those things.
Yeah.
So I think maybe next month that might be our challenge.
Yeah.
And after these years, I'm thankful that that's our challenge.
That it's not survival anymore.
It's not survival.
bare bones.
No.
We have to wrap things up. We're well over 30 minutes, but we will continue this in the Discord server for anyone who wants to keep chatting about it and asking questions. Of course, thank you to our Patreon family for helping us get this show out. And remember that if you want to be a Patreon, you will get exclusive merch mailed out every single season, like this fun Learn Morse t-shirt. If you want to learn Morse, you should get our t-shirt or our mugs. Our Morse mugs.
Morse mugs.
Morse mugs?
Morse mugs.
Mugs of Morse. Every single mug we sell also has our Morse cheat sheet on the back, which is an easy way to learn it, and even your kids can learn it because that's how we teach our kids Morse code. You will also get printables, ebooks, and more. Today's quote of the day is from a podcast I was listening to today with Wise Traditions. If you listen to that podcast, it was episode 375. Here's the quote. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's amazing in certain parts of the
Quivering with
farming...
anticipation. I'm sorry.
Seriously.
Do you want me to read it?
Okay.
It's amazing in certain parts of the farming community, the reticence
to consider
they've been misled about what's necessary and what's possible. We were just talking about that.
This is John Moody, the famous food grower, researcher, and author, and he was doing episode 375 of Wise Traditions. He was talking about setting up your local food buying clubs and the difficulties you have finding producers who will sell you food that's raised without GMOs or on pasture or grass-fed or no sprays, and how the local farmers have been so indoctrinated that they tell you, you can't raise an apple without sprays. Tell that to Johnny Appleseed, dude.
We can't grow root crops here with any kind of success.
The farmers.
I think there's a number of situations.
It's because of Monsanto.
It's because of Monsanto. But we can grow the most beautiful grapevines with almost no effort. The vines themselves were cheap.
I can grow anything that doesn't grow around here with Monsanto crops.
That's true, yeah.
And if it
we struggle with corn too.
Around here with Monsanto crops,
yeah,
I can't grow it because the crazy
pests
bugs and the blight and the things that come with that Monsanto has obviously bred in.
Yeah.
They make us not be able to grow them.
So really,
thank you, John Moody, and I would totally recommend the Wise Traditions podcast if you're looking for something to listen to after this.
I'm going to end that off with just a quick anecdote because I forgot about this. We talked about this not too long ago. We live in this beautiful place where it is theoretically possible to grow amazing crops. But because of commercial farming, nobody here grows amazing crops. Everybody grows the worst stuff. Cabbage, potatoes,
they grow
carrots,
government-subsidized crops.
Soybeans.
That mostly feed Chinese animals.
The most successful crops we have here are like, I don't know, France, Germany.
Yeah.
We have tomatoes.
Peppers.
We have peppers are good.
Cilantro's
amazing. The basil does incredibly well.
Grapes.
The grapevines I can't go on enough about.
Yeah.
They're incredible. Asparagus. Like all these amazing vegetables that I would prefer to eat
And
over
they
cabbage
feed
and potatoes.
humans.
They feed humans. So there's no reason that they couldn't have been doing this here for the last 100 years instead of growing all this garbage.
But when government interferes, they find a way to mess it
They
up.
find a way to mess
And
it
when
up.
lazy people go with that, they mess it up too.
You know what it is? It's when lazy people get angry about things. Like, that's the same with this whole woke thing.
Yeah.
This is what they would have done 100 years ago. There
Yeah.
would have been intelligent farmers that say, whoa, don't do that. And then the mob, easy Simpsons reference, the mob would have said, no, this is what we're doing. And now everybody's like, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, 100 years ago, woke culture won farming.
Yeah.
So this
And
is
now
where we're
they
at.
have to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we're going to do something different.
And it's working
And if you're
really
doing
well.
something different, please tag me on Instagram so
Let
we
us
can be
know.
friends.
There you go.
Because there's nobody
Yeah.
here. Okay, thanks for listening, everybody, and happy Monday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.